Have you ever felt overwhelmed as a pastor or leader? Have you lost motivation and wondered even if you're called to be in ministry? You know, we understand and can empathize with you in many ways because we've walked through similar situations in our ministry, but we've found ways in which the Lord has been able to give us strategies to run the race with perseverance. And so we want to talk about those things today and help you overcome feelings of hopelessness and helplessness in those times, because God has got the best for you.
Yeah, he really does. And staying refreshed as pastors and leaders is essential for us for the long haul.
It is.
You know?
Yeah.
And so many times there's been moments where, and I'm sure many of you can relate to this, where we've just thought, that's it, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm just going to quit. I've got to go and do something else because it's just overwhelming. And whenever we've had those thoughts, it's usually boils down to we're not refreshed. We've got the weight of the world on our shoulders. We've, without realizing it, it's snuck up on us.
Yeah.
We're doing too much. We're not delegating and developing others. And we've just lost our confidence.
Yeah.
And we're feeling exhausted.
Yeah.
Frankly.
Yeah. And we often get to the end of year, don't we, where, you know, we're all dealing with budgets for our churches and ministries. And we suddenly realize we didn't have a holiday by the end of the year. And so there are times when we are physically tired.
Yeah.
And, you know, for us, the best thing, like you say, is not making major decisions, but really taking some time out to rest, to get some good sleep, maybe turn the phone off. I mean, we live in a beautiful property in the country. So, you know, actually going on walks, being outside in the fresh air, those kind of things. And for you, getting on your motorcycle.
You know, it's so important to get a hobby.
Yeah.
I know that sounds crazy, but really getting a hobby. Now, a hobby is something that you do regularly, but you do it because you love it.
Yeah.
That's the important thing.
Yeah.
For me, I love motorcycles. Being able to, you know, have a motorcycle over the past 36 years has meant that when I'm tired, when I'm feeling stressed, when I'm feeling like I don't know how I'm going to do this, Kate will often say to me, honey, I think it's time for you to go for a ride on your motorcycle. Yeah. That's my hobby. And I get on that bike and I ride, and there's something about riding through the dappled sunshine on the, you know, gorgeous North Carolina roads, tree-lined roads that just, or maybe in your area, maybe it's mountains or maybe it's plains, whatever it is, you know, it just refreshes the soul.
Yeah, and I think another key is really recognizing that those people around you, whether it's your spouse or your team members, actually recognize when you're tired, because we get cranky, maybe we get demanding and controlling, or, you know, we're driving a vision, like, why isn't anyone serving my vision? And we feel that we're getting agitated with people. You know, there's signs that maybe it's time to just be with the Lord and find out what is going on in our hearts, really connect again with our soul and our spirit, and hear the voice of God. You know, maybe we've got some judgments, maybe we've resented people in our team, maybe we've resented people in our church, just feeling overburdened by the demands. And, you know, sometimes we actually have to ask a question, what is really going on in our heart? And is there anyone around me that could help me, pray with me? Or do you just need to go and take like a mini break or a Sabbath and just be with the Lord yourself? You know, things like that are important.
Yeah, they really are. And, you know, a lot is centered around the thought life.
Really?
And, you know, we as pastors, we deal with this search for significance. You know, it's a human condition.
Yeah.
We want significance, and God's designed us for significance. But when it's unhealthy, with this drive that I've got to be significant and I've got to be the one who everybody somehow sees, it was me who did it, and aren't I an amazing leader because I was there, I was always there, and I came up with the ideas, and I pushed through, and I did more hours than anybody else, and all of that causes us to just implode because actually we can't keep up with our ambition.
No, and also then we feel like we have a stewardship responsibility, that we're being paid to lead the church. And therefore, sometimes we feel that means we have to be available for everyone, every evening of the week, every day of the week. And actually, no, part of our role is that we're empowering and raising and developing other people, volunteers and staff, to shoulder responsibility and to care for people with us. And learning to delegate, where it's not all about our ministry, is, I think, one of the biggest keys to walking in refreshing.
That's
because
so true.
We can know whether we're doing too many evening meetings. If you're doing too many meetings in the evening, cut back. Let somebody else take one of the evenings, or just stop that program for a while.
Yeah, we like to remind ourselves, don't we, darling, that every time we're doing something, us doing that something is denying someone else the privilege and the joy of doing it.
Yes. Yeah.
And so very often, when you choose to stay at home so that you can be refreshed, you might have these feelings of guilt that, wow, I really should be there, especially if you're used to being the centerpiece of everything. You're going to feel those feelings of guilt, but just remind yourself, no. You not being there has actually given somebody else the joy of doing something that they've perhaps wanted to do for the longest time, but you've been in the way. So here you are at home being refreshed while somebody else is actually having the joy.
Yeah.
Of course, that does have its own responsibility in that person may not do it quite as well as you, and that you would be valid in saying that. But I want to encourage you, don't try to be the hero and go and reinsert yourself. But instead, remember, delegation is not the game. Development is the game.
Yeah.
And so when you delegate, giving somebody else the opportunity, we really want to make sure that through feedback and through coaching and through nurturing, and being corrective in a kindly way, really, really helps develop somebody.
Yeah.
And that is the key to us staying in that place of being rested and refreshed.
Yeah. And just another one is, often pastors understand pastors the best. We need to have friends outside of our churches, outside of our circle, other pastors, other leaders that could be mentors to us. We have clusters in Catch the Fire where pastors and leaders can really connect together and actually be vulnerable with one another. Because I think as leaders, we tend to find it very hard to share our hearts, because sometimes people don't respond very well to that. And finding people that you can trust has been another thing in our life that has been a value to us. So
it really has. We've
had people like John and Carol that we've been able to confide in. We've got Betsy and Chester who are now in our church.
Killstras, yeah.
They've helped us in RTF ministry, but we can chat. Your parents pray for us. Just multiple ways of feeling that you're not alone, because you're not alone, actually.
Yeah, that's so good, Kate. I do want to encourage you, though, don't buy into that whole mentality that as a pastor, you can never share anything with anyone in your congregation. No, I would encourage you, be open, be transparent. Obviously, like Kate was saying, there are some people that you don't want to be sharing everything with, but invest in friendships. Kate's going off for a walk after this, and she's going with one of her friends who's a member of the church, not a leader, but a member of the church, and they've developed a great friendship. They're going for a walk around the lake, because getting into nature is another really important thing. But no doubt, while you're in nature, while you're on that walk,
and getting exercise,
you're getting exercise, which is another important key, because it's easy to forget and neglect your own body through lack of exercise and eating all the wrong foods and poor nutrition. You can end up being in fatigue and then spinning the wheels even more. So
so we encourage you, find your way, find your rhythm, maybe change some rhythms, change some ways of doing things, and be open with your church about why it's important that we all take rest to be refreshed.
Yes, because when the pastors have a lifestyle of being refreshed, it gives permission for the whole church to enter into that same lifestyle. And honestly, that's the kind of church I would love to be part of. A church where our leaders are refreshed and I have permission to stay refreshed.